To Hello, everyone. My name is Edith, also known as Lady E, and welcome to the Lady E Effect podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, we interview purpose-driven professionals that do amazing contributions to people, businesses, and communities worldwide. If that's something that is interesting for you, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all social media platforms. Welcome to season 4. I know it's been a little while, but we're always serving the community when we're also not on here. So nothing changed. As you know, we love to interview the best of the best, and today is nothing is different from that. So today I'm super excited to interview our guest, and without taking any more time, welcome. We appreciate your time. Thank you, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
All right, thanks for having me, Edith. It's my pleasure. Drew Deraney. Right now, I'm a caregiver coach, and I can say that I've reinvented myself 4 times in the last 5 years. I like to say that, we're taught that life is linear when we're young, and it is until it's not. And those circumstances get in the way, and we have to make choices. So, when people ask me about my story, I start out by letting them know I was in healthcare for 24 years, working in hospitals. And when in 2015, my wife decided we were no longer going to be married, we had 3 young kids. She moved out. We went through mediation, and divorce was final in April of 2018. When I was ready to, take part 2 of my life and change things for the better, I got fired from my last hospital job. And then 10 days after that, my son had some mental health issues that we needed to address. And then the night before Christmas Eve in 2018, my father unexpectedly got sick and passed away. So when you get those four top life stressors simultaneously, and it's never happened before, you're in uncharted territory. And I wasn't too confident about what I wanted to do in life, or even if I wanted to be here. My decision was to stay on the earth and take care of my kids and my mother. On the other side, I kind of did it without any self-care, and I didn't know where my next step was. And always wanting to own my own company. And after getting the blessing from my father before he got sick, they were going to help me in any way necessary. I ended up, rather than making the decision logically and starting my own business and what I wanted to do, I wanted to start a healthcare consulting company. I kind of took I'm going to say the easy way out, shortcut. And a franchising was available, and I talked to a franchise advisor. I bought a franchise. It was a good business model, a company helping other companies save money. Very honorable purpose, but really not the purpose I was looking for. So, not really knowing how to run a business, I kind of did my best, and then COVID hit, and that kind of derailed me again. At that point, when networking globally, I got to meet an book editor, and I had never written a book. I always wanted to, I just didn't ever had content. This time now I had content. So
Mm.
we did everything virtually, and book was released in 2023, and it's called I'll Have What She's Having, Memoir of a Reformed People Pleaser.
Mm.
And I really decided to write the book that way because as I was telling my story to my editor and basically anybody when I was networking globally, as I was telling my story, I started to heal myself from within. And then I got to thinking, this is a good thing. But many men are told not to be emotional or share or cry or anything, that
Mm.
we are taught to suppress any emotions. And when we do, we kind of enable ourselves to get sicker. We don't take care of ourselves. So it hit me that if I can heal myself from within, changing my behavior, then other men can too. So I walked away from the franchise, breached a 10-year agreement, and they were okay with it. The franchisor respected what I was going through.
Mm.
And I started my journey on helping coach men, whether it was men's groups. I started a podcast. I still wasn't fulfilled until I really stopped and thought about who my direct client would be, and it would be somebody like me, a 50 some odd year old man who's divorced with children
Mm.
and just trying to find his own purpose in life. So I did pivot there. That was the third pivot. And
Mm.
things were going well until July of last year. My son's got autism, and he took a turn for the worse where he really needed me. So I walked away from my business to be with him 24/7.
Mhm.
And he's doing better now. And I finally am back in public eye, and I've pivoted once again, hopefully for the last professional time. So I am still coaching, but I'm a coaching caregivers because I'm a caregiver for my son and
Mm,
really realize how challenging it is to navigate the system. So
mm,
I've pivoted to coach caregivers for special needs children or
mm.
adults. And
Beautiful.
then I'm in the process of founding a nonprofit and a foundation to
Mm.
help parents with autism. So that's
That
it. That's how I got here.
that is absolutely amazing. Um, God bless you. We are super excited for you to be here. This is absolutely all of our episodes are, powerful from a man's perspective, a man that has experienced a lot of things as a son, a former husband, a businessman, a father. This is actually very important for men to have these type of conversations because um, it is very important for men to have a safe space to communicate, to express, to be transparent, and to be honest and still feel safe after the conversation concludes.
Right.
And our community, shout out to all the male professionals we've had, and those that support because we operate globally and we are community based, but we have a huge population that is dedicated to our men. So this is actually a very important time, and I believe season for very important conversations to take place. So thank you for just sharing with the audience your journey. I wouldn't even say background, your journey, and all of them absolutely connect to where you are now. And we here at the Lady E Effect also love the special needs community. We actually started there. I, as a professional, started there very, very young in elementary school. And I'm sure you as a parent, me as a child at the time, there are questions that we asked were probably pushed away. And I think it's important for us to have voices like yours that speak on the behalf of men, fathers, those parental, very important attributes that when it comes to, in general, how you cater your child before you label special needs or anything on them as your child's son or daughter, but especially man to man father raising his son. And those are challenges that both of you are learning to overcome and face together is something very powerful. So we're very appreciative of your story and just how that is a beautiful way of even serving the community from a professional standpoint. So you actually answered our initial question as in what brought you here, but with your permission, I would love to touch a little further in terms of sharing with fathers, right? Fathers that have sons in particular. And absolutely, daughters are important too. But when it comes to special needs and just men having unfortunately not as safe places to talk about their vulnerability, the pressure of being a father, not even just anything from a financial aspect, but really the mental
Mhm.
aspect of processing things when the world just expects you to just be a man and maybe they don't understand what that means. And I would definitely love for you to share with the audience and especially parents, fathers in particular, how they raise their daughters, of course, is important, but how have you, as a father that has a special needs child, let alone son, what type of advice, if you would you like to share with those particular fathers, but parents in general?
No, it's a good question. Uh, I think first of all, my son who's got autism, he's 23 now, so he's our oldest of three. I've got two boys
Mm,
and a girl.
mm,
So having your firstborn with special needs is an important thing to think about because when you're a first-time parent, uh, society teaches you what to do with the expectation that you're going to have a healthy kid.
mm,
Just
mm,
no issues, and so we're kind of taught to plan for one path, right? And not that I necessarily want to scare first time parents, it is good to learn both potential paths because if the expectation is that you're going to have a quote unquote healthy child, physically, mentally, whatever, and that's all you're gearing towards, and if after the birth, whether it's right away or years down the road, you notice something different and there is a disability or a special needs, you don't want to be caught with the, oh no, now what? Because that is the worst feeling, especially as a first time parent, and especially if you learn right away. Um, we didn't notice differences till about 3 or 4 years old, but still,
Mhm.
that was 23 years ago. So, really unsure what to do next. Your first thought is, oh, it's just a boy being a boy, getting in trouble for causing, issues and not really thinking that there may be something wrong. So, step one, I would say, is when you're a first time parent, make sure you learn all the possibilities. And that can just be two paths, a typical child or an atypical child, or
Mhm.
whatever that is.
Mhm.
And that there are services out there for you. You just got to know who to talk to, and ask the right questions, but you don't prepare for that.
Mhm.
So that would be number one. Number two would be check your ego at the door. When my son was having some issues that were apparent that was something was different, I was determined to believe that it was just my boy being my boy. He's being a boy, he's being a son. Let's not make a big deal out of it or magnify it. Whereas my wife at the time wanted to test him early. She was a nurse, and but
Mhm.
I always knew that she liked to catastrophize. Everything was at the worst it could be. So that was part of an interesting dynamic
Mhm.
that having him tested wouldn't have hurt, but my ego was that he's okay. And finally, when he started having issues in it was really in preschool when he finally left my parents' house after being taken care of them for 2.5 years, that there were some instances. So we did get him checked, and it took a while to find the right people.
Right.
So it's good not to hide what's happening in your home. I was always taught to keep everything private, but that's
Mhm.
part of the reason why when you keep things private and you don't tell anybody, you don't find the right help.
Ab-
So we didn't know who to talk to. We didn't know who to trust. So we didn't talk to any parents who may have kids. We went to the school. And some of the schools are kind of behind the times. So it was a struggle for us to get him the right help. He was diagnosed in 2016 at age 14, little late, but better late than never, and diagnosed with autism. And so we were able to get an IEP. Um, but I would say the earlier you can address anything that you may feel is different from what you expected,
Mhm.
better off you and your child is going to be. So those would be my 2 points of advice.
Mhm. That's beautiful. There's so many angles that you hit that is important. I think with society, right? Healthcare. Let's use healthcare for an example. I think we get too caught up in ego, like you said, as a parent or even as a professional. Titles are not important. It's about understanding, it's about observation, it's about you don't know it all, right? But it's also okay because every experience is also unique.
Mhm.
And as parents, I'm sure you learn that over time about your child. And even the example that you use, men are kind of used to being more rough and this, but there's a sensitivity with humans in general. And you see it with children. And even something that you mentioned that is extremely important, my mother would say children learn where they live, and it's not just your home, it's actually the community. So you brought a very important point. When you don't speak up, how are you going to find the proper help if people that actually would be qualified to give you the best solutions versus maybe a one and done
Mhm.
fix it that's not really solving the core or the root of the problem? Especially when it comes to behavior, when it comes to just different things that expand, when it comes to the capacity. So, what I've learned is the importance of just making sure we're intentional about just asking the right questions.
Mhm.
We need to make sure we ask the right questions. So, thank you so much for touching bases on that because it is important for parents to ask for help. We have a community for a reason. And, we get a lot of things that are taught to us in school or the news or whatever, but the accuracy really comes back to that personal individual's experience because your son's path is not going to look like anyone else. And this is also something that was a challenge for me when I practiced in this field because we get too caught up in labeling the child or even the adult young being. And that is not what it is. Maybe we need to actually, something that I will respect that your former wife did mention, just test things early, or ask things early because that could be preventative, but this is actually something that taught everybody. Autism and special needs is just, it's a huge spectrum within itself, and every human being doesn't operate the same. That's something that I've learned personally. And for those that are parents or teachers or, may even experience it themselves, which even in our community, we've had the blessing of interviewing former guests that operate in IDD, autism waiver, different things like that. And they are amazing business owners. So I think it's just about having a healthy community that actually supports you versus suppresses you with, oh, we found out this, we found out that. And that can kind of open up that room of discouragement
Mhm.
versus letting that type of young adult or young child know, hey, this is what we learn. There's a lot we can learn, and you encourage them whether it's through fine gross motor skills, putting them in creative writing or art or sports or something that they really learn about themselves and things that they like that can also teach parents, right? Because we're all learning.
Mhm.
We have grandparents, we have parents, but your experience with your child is absolutely not going to look like everyone else, but it's good to have healthy communities to be able to have these conversations. So we appreciate you touching bases on that because there's a lot of areas that people miss, especially with the area that you mentioned when it comes to you can't keep everything in your house. There's things that you do need to speak up about so
Mhm.
you get the qualified solution. So, as we have touched bases on that area, this is actually going to bring us in the next question as it pertains to the community, which there are a lot of things that you have actually touched bases on that relates to that. But in the profession that you operate in from then to even now, because definitely having that community that you were supporting in men. But I think the fulfillment there was that parenthood, that fatherhood,
Mhm.
right? Of being able to still focus on the men, but from the child's perspective in terms of, okay, are we getting the right support while we're learning how to experience going toward the proper direction with our children as they grow? So my question for you is in regards to the community, why is it so critical, if it's critical, for the area of your practitioner to be operating in today's world?
Well, I guess first and foremost that I believe every individual at a young age needs a mentor,
Yes.
somebody who can help guide them, somebody who's been through the fire, and I actually think I think a young girl needs a strong female mentor and a strong male mentor, and a
Okay.
little boy needs a strong female mentor and a strong male mentor. Now,
Mhm.
those mentors don't necessarily come from blood relatives; they don't have to.
Mhm.
You could have somebody from, a family member, friends, teachers, coaches, whatever. Whoever it is, as long as it's somebody trusted and who has prevailed or been resilient and fought through things and can give you some life skills that are going to help you, it's very important to have a mentor. And for those who don't, when you look at the data, those young boys who didn't have a father figure young, and I'm going to stick with the men's aspect, they have more of an opportunity to fall into drug use, suicide, or prison.
Mhm.
And my ultimate mission in what I do is to help individuals kind of find out what their true purpose is,
Mm,
who they are, get to the root cause and not what the symptoms are.
mhm,
Ideally, big picture, I want to reduce the divorce rate in this country and the male
mm,
suicide rate. And when I say male suicide rate, I say it because of what the data shows that
mm,
men are 50% of the population and we're 80% of the suicides. When you
mm,
ask the question, why do you think that is? I think men isolate themselves. And so if you're in a relationship and you don't communicate well with your significant other, you tend to argue more and maybe isolate yourself. And then that could lead to a low self identity and what's my worth in the world. And then you see these suicides. So I really want to enhance the the communication aspect between genders. I mean, men and women think differently,
mm,
and we've got to acknowledge that because it's scientifically accurate. And
mhm,
it behooves each individual to learn the thinking language of the other gender. Um, Once we communicate better with the same and opposite sexes, we can learn to enhance relationships a lot better. And I think that when both individuals in couplehood respect each other and feel heard and appreciated, they'll feel better about themselves, are more likely to stay together and build healthy, strong children, and we can reduce the divorce rate and the suicide rate. I mean, a lot of people are taking the easy way out and not working hard with their marriage, but there are proactive steps you can take. The
mm,
earlier, the better. So, I mean, within the community, I'd want to get to people when, again, when they're early in their relationship to address the important topics to understand what the expectations are, because a lot of couples don't have the big discussion on the taboo topics, I call it politics, the sex, the religion, the money. And when you commit to somebody and then you learn of the one of those four things and their philosophy is different from yours and you're already committed, it's a lot more difficult to or challenging to navigate that path. So I think that's the biggest part is me being available to be a mentor and then to maybe find appropriate mentors for my clients, but also let them be heard and find out who they really are. Because most of us are living somebody else's life because we're programmed to, by the age of 18, that 90% of our belief about ourselves and the world is kind of given to us. And not many of us do the self reflection to say, hey, are these really my beliefs or is this what I've been taught? You know? So
mm.
that's kind of where I help out.
That's absolutely necessary. Just both angles
Mhm.
that you just mentioned, simultaneously go hand in hand. Relationships, whether you're already in marriage or working towards that, it is important to speak up and be transparent with your significant other. Absolutely. When it comes to men isolating themselves, that can be dangerous. There's somewhat of a healthy balance. It just, again, can lean more towards danger and not. And then, let's say if it's, you're isolated, what are you doing in your isolation? Are you praying? Are you studying? Are you motivating your mind? Right? Are you resting? Are you taking care of yourself? Or are you indulging in what could, let your mind drift away and not the best place? So it is very important as men and women to communicate better. As you said earlier, leave the ego at the door because men carry a lot. Men carry a lot. And we have a huge community of men. These are fathers, these are brothers, these are sons, they're uncles, they're every form of men, husbands, former husbands, but there was a common denominator where they felt either unheard or unsupported,
Mhm.
let alone everything else, right? But just those two areas is what has been shared with, our community, let alone maybe personal, professional conversation. So all the men that I know that will be tuning in to just hear all of the areas that you touch bases on, I absolutely believe that they will be heard and hear their voice through yours because, especially when you get older, if you transition to business or whatever areas where, businesses kind of like a roller coaster. It's kind of up and down. And then life doesn't stop, especially when you're a father. And, even if you're not a father, there's still attributes as a man that the world is just kind of feeling like it's tugging on your shoulders versus understanding that you're a human first.
Mhm.
And sometimes you need times to just process things that, especially when it's unfolding and you're not really understanding, okay, what is the solution, right? So I just love that all of the areas of your life you didn't just shut down, right? It actually inspired you to not even just still support the male community, even through the fatherhood and the parenthood of you practicing and doing that. What I believe is a powerful shift when it comes to caregiving for special needs, because special needs, autism, and just that aspect of the healthcare community is very huge, but it's not as boisterous as it should be, and it's very important for fathers to be speaking from that perspective. And even with your unique experience, and God bless all your children, for your oldest to your youngest, and having two boys and, a young girl, right? And just the experience of each of the, um, your children and just how that can also affect their relationship. They're witnessing something with their sibling, also you're still a father to them.
Mhm.
I actually had one more question before we transition out. And I do actually want to keep it in that community
Mhm.
fatherhood space because this is absolutely a question that covers both spaces.
Right.
Um, what would you like to share as a father of a daughter as well?
Mhm.
Because men raising young men versus men raising young women
Mhm.
are two different worlds. Of course, they can coexist,
Yeah.
but there are definitely, I'm sure, differences.
Mhm.
So if you would like to share with the audience and, of course, other fathers that are tuning in regards to, you know, girl dads, if you'd like to share anything about that.
Yeah. Yeah, my daughter means the world to me. She's my youngest of three. She's right now a freshman in college. Um, I'd like to say I didn't parent any differently. That wouldn't be true, though. Fathers tend to protect their daughter in different ways from protecting their son.
Mm,
Um, Although what I always instilled in my daughter was to self-advocate, and she struggled in the beginning. Like, what does that mean? And you want to look out for yourself. You want to, whether you're a boy or a girl, you need to have your boundaries. You need to adhere to them and have your non-negotiables. And what I mean by that is women deserve as much respect as men, and you don't need to pretend you're somebody else in order to be valued. If
mm,
anything, uh, I hammer into my daughter, always be yourself, right? Because if you're not yourself, you're going to attract the wrong people. And it's a challenge when you're young, whether you're a young girl or a young boy, to be yourself all the time because you want to fit in, you want to be liked. And that's why the mentorship is so important because kids can be swayed very easily by peer pressure.
mm, mhm,
So, I mean, with my daughter, I hug and kiss my daughter like I hug and kiss my boys. So it's like I didn't treat them much differently in that aspect. What's interesting though, as a divorced father, and my daughter lives with me and has for years, um, knowing that I can't be both mother and father yet, if I wanted to be more understanding, I worked on the empathy piece to
mm,
try to understand, put myself in her shoes as much as I could by asking open-ended questions and giving her permission to be vulnerable and me accepting that and not judging. Um, so it's challenging. It is maybe a better father, understanding her perspective as a woman. Um, I don't know if I would do much differently in the raising of my kids because whether you're a boy or a girl, you need to build self respect, self trust, and self love. Because
mm.
the stronger you can be confident in yourself, in your own skin, the more productive you're going to be and more and happier and joyful you're going to be in society. Um, so some differences, yeah. She's always going to be daddy's little girl. I call her my oxygen. I'll say to her, "Give me, I need oxygen." That's the big hug, you know.
So beautiful.
Um, so yeah, I guess that's what I would say.
Um, these conversations warm my heart. So I know a lot of fathers, and shout out to all the fathers with the daughters, and shout out to all the fathers with the sons as well. You touched a very good point, because I think a lot of times in interviews, or maybe shows or platforms, a lot of women are asked about how they raise their daughter or their sons, and the father may not be present in the house, but there are many fathers that they have either both sons and daughters, or if not either or, that they are full-time fathers. And, their children live with them. Of course, they understand they're not the mother, but they understand the importance of the nurture and
Mhm.
outside of the protection. So that was actually a really important point that you mentioned as well. And thank you for sharing that. That's something that is important to understand, especially when you said, we're not here to love our children different. It's about just the observation of learning how to identify ways that their personalities is growing every day. And even as us as adults, that doesn't stop, right? That's why personal development is so important for human beings, because before you can be a great father or a businessman or husband or anything like that, we have to process what's going on inside of you. And that was something that brought us back to what you were originally speaking about. In order for you to learn how to be your best or better self, which best doesn't exist to me because we're always getting better, right? And there's no such thing about perfection, but the perfection of, God working through us and just the love and the grace that He gives us and how we can express this to other people. It is so beautiful to love one another, love your children, remind them about their respect, remind them about what is important. And this also helps with their mental health, especially when it comes to their emotional health too, whether for young women or young men. It is important as a community, as we also learn how to process that better as adults, your mental health, and just taking times when you need to take a step back, right? Kind of have your reset or your rest, or moments where, let me make sure that I'm able to operate and have my moments, because I'm sure, being a full-time father,
Mhm.
you may need your moment. So, thank you for sharing all of what you have so far today. It really has been a blessing to have you here. My final question for you is, here at the Lady E Effect, of course, we love to interview amazing guests like yourself, very purpose driven. And purpose driven can just really come back to the journey that you experience and your purpose just even leading to that. So, how would you identify to the audience the way you see purpose and why that's important to be aware of today?
Mm, that's a good question. And many, and I'll say many men because I've experienced it, we base our purpose on external circumstances, which is very unhealthy. And I
Mm,
say that because what I thought was my purpose in life was to have, a relationship with my significant other and a solid profession financially.
mm,
And when the divorce and the job firing happened in a 6 month period, I, in essence, lost both of those things that I utilized to value myself.
mm,
Very unhealthy. In retrospect, had I known what I know now, um, my purpose for me, yeah, I don't like the status quo. So my purpose in life, I think success happens when we find a better way to do things and we're willing and able to share it with others. And the best way for me to do that is I buck the system. I don't like the status quo. I think differently.
mm.
When you think out of the box, you find more creative and innovative ways to do things better. And
Absolutely.
I share that. I don't keep it to myself. And when I'm able to do that, I really contribute and add value to others and ultimately have an impact on their lives, a positive impact. And so knowing that your purpose comes from within and we can heal ourselves from within, that's when you know you'll start seeing things just click.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and that because once you know yourself and you're comfortable in your own skin, you'll start thinking and doing stuff for others,
yes.
service first, and it all comes back to you. And that's how you can calm the ego down is when you know yourself very well and you're comfortable in your own skin. You be authentic and to heck what people think about you, as long as you think about yourself in a positive way and you're doing the right things. So
Mm. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. If anyone is looking to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch with you?
right now, I'd say email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. You can also go to my website, profitcompassion.com. We're going to be changing some things there, but most of the stuff you see there is still accurate. So then you can find me on LinkedIn too, and or go to my YouTube channel, profitcompassion.com. With the YouTube channel, that's where I have a lot of my podcasts from caving in to crushing it. I'd love for you guys to go there and subscribe and watch some of the episodes. You'll be impacted in a positive way.